All right, just a brief video here to talk through a couple arguments on each side on the handout that um, maybe aren't as well talked about or not as publicized, I don't think, that I feel like need kind of just touched on briefly, right? So, argument number one on the side of legalizing it, right, is just that it's super expensive to enforce the marijuana laws. I've heard that one a lot. It's very common, easy to understand. Um, the other one, of course, is the medicinal and positive uses. Touched on that a lot yesterday. All right. So here's the one argument that I don't think gets a lot of play, which is the individual liberty argument. Okay. In other words, we allow individual adults to make decisions regarding alcohol and regarding smoking, right, and regarding a number of other things. And I mean, nobody's going to ever debate that alcohol and cigarettes aren't in some nature addictive and only have positives for you. They don't, obviously. There's lots of dangers and negatives that go along with alcohol and cigarettes. But we allow adults, right, adults to make that decision. And so then, therefore, obviously, why shouldn't we allow adults to make the decision in regards to marijuana? Okay. And again, it's not a perfect argument, but it does make a lot of sense in terms of choice, right? We allow adults to make the choices that govern their lifestyle. All right, and then the other one is that by regulating it, this is argument number 4 on the handout, by legalizing it, we can regulate it. So, if it's illegal, that means it's dealt on the black market, it's potentially mixed and cut with different things, and it wouldn't be very safe. But if you legalize it, then there's a whole structure of laws in place that will regulate that, right? You looked at some of those laws a couple days ago. And obviously that would allow tax revenue to be collected, but it would also keep people safe because, similar to obviously alcohol, like when you buy a beer, you don't have to worry about it being laced with something, right? I mean, like that company would get in huge trouble for it. And it would be the same thing with marijuana, which would actually keep people probably safer because they would know the levels of THC and CBD that they're getting in any particular strand of marijuana. So those are two arguments that I don't hear quite as often, or maybe they're a little more complex. So let's flip it, right? Let's be against then legalizing marijuana. So number one, pretty standard. It's the negative health effects, right? It's the persistent use drops IQ. Again, it's pretty common. I've heard it lots of places. Secondly, that that marijuana actually does the exact opposite of what we think, right? That doesn't necessarily make life more fun. It in fact lowers motivation and lowers the drive to succeed, if you will. Okay, that's pretty stereotypical in a lot of ways. So we know that. All right, here's one that oftentimes goes unsaid. I'll hear students say this, no offense, all the time when we get to this topic in an in-class setting. Well, yeah, but marijuana isn't addictive. What? Yes, it is. Of course it is. Right? I mean, just about anything can be addictive, right? When it activates your brain receptors and it gives you a shot of dopamine, it's addictive, right? Like success is addictive. Gambling is addictive. Video games are addictive, right? I mean, like, they're addictive, right? Now, I gave you more specifics in the handout, right? But roughly 30% of users will develop what we would call a dependency, right? Where they feel like they are much better if they're using it. And then about 10% of those people will develop what we would really truly call an addiction, right? Like they have a compulsive desire and they cannot stop. So it's much less than other types of substances, but to say that marijuana isn't addictive is just laughable. It is, as are many other substances. So that is clearly a negative. Anytime that your brain becomes addicted to a chemical, it's not a positive. All right, and then finally, the one that again I think gets kind of glossed over that people don't realize is that CBD and THC, the two main components that's used in medicinal marijuana, they can actually be synthetically produced. So you don't have to use weed, right, in order to to get the benefits from these things. And more so, when you smoke marijuana, the dosage is impossible to measure, right? Like, how often are you puffing? Exactly how much THC and CBD was in that joint? I mean, you have no idea. And so to hear people say that, well, I'm going to smoke marijuana for the medicinal effects is really just kind of inaccurate, right? I mean, like, it may be giving you some good effects, but imagine if we regulated it and had it in produced quantities and dosages. So then you're left with the question, well, do you want to use the marijuana for medicinal purposes, or is it a combination of you just want to get high? Because the THC and the CBD that's synthetically produced doesn't produce a high. And so then you're kind of left with, what is this really for? Now, what you're going to do is you're going to need to choose in your assignment one of each of these arguments on each side. You have to choose one in favor of legalizing it and one against legalizing it. And you're going to need to do the steps that are in the assignment. First step, all right, after you choose the argument that you're going to go after, you're going to present the argument, right? Now, just in a sentence or two. You're going to need to actually say what the argument is. And then, in 2 or 3 or 4 sentences after that, you're going to need to show the logical flaw in that argument. Or maybe you'll use some data to show that it's got something wrong with it. Or you'll include some other facts that go against it, okay? And so, the idea is to turn the other side on itself, right? You're like, oh, here's an argument against legalizing marijuana. Well, yeah, but look at the problems with this argument, right? To make it invalid, right? That's your goal. And you need to do it on both sides, okay? So again, you pick an argument and you actually present it. You say what the argument is briefly. And then, in a detailed explanation, you show how that argument is wrong or flawed in order to prove your point. Okay, so again, make sure, right? I know you're probably on one side or the other, but you need to do it for both. All right, you're going to end up with 2 of these pieces for the assignment.